Tuesday. Happy Tuesday evening. Doing a quick little live stream. I got an email earlier from Sammy. Sammy sent me an email. She said, "Hello, Soft-Spoken Shaman. I enjoy your videos. I've got a quick question for you. I want to get married someday, but I'm scared about getting divorced. How do I get over this fear?" Very interesting question. I like this question a lot, actually. And I like it because it's not an esoteric question. It doesn't really require me thinking all that deeply, but it's a question with a clear-cut answer. You want to get married and you don't want to get divorced. Well, to be logical about this, let's look at the primary cause of divorce. Some people might say the primary cause of divorce is irreconcilable differences, but I would say the primary cause of divorce relates to money. And when somebody says that they're getting divorced for reasons of irreconcilable differences, what they're really saying is they're too pussy to actually say it's because of money. But it really is. Every divorce is because of financial reasons. Every single one. And by every single one, I mean, 90% or so. So the best way to ensure that you're going to get married and not get divorced is to take that into consideration before you even get married. So make sure that your financial footing is as stable as a home foundation, right? Make sure that whoever you marry also has the similar situation so that if you both get married and you're both, financially well off, then, the marriage will probably last. And I've said this before in prior videos. One of the biggest problems in the West in particular, is that people get married for, Disney, romantic, movie type of reasons, because somebody looks hot or whatever. Whereas in the East, in China and some of the other Asian countries, they don't get married for this reason. There's got to be some sort of attraction, but, look at arranged marriages, or look at marriages in China where it's, basically the patriarchs searching around for another bloodline that would coalesce well with theirs, people who come from similar backgrounds. Honestly, I think a lot of divorces happen for that reason, either because of financial problems or because the spouses do not come from similar backgrounds. And you can test this in this manner. We all have friends, right? Hopefully. We all have friends that come from differing backgrounds. Some of our friends, and I would argue some of our best friends actually come from the same or a similar background as us, right? And that's why you vibe so well. Well, I think the same thing goes for a marriage also, is if you come from differing backgrounds, that the initial attraction and the romance may be able to overcome that, but as that withers away, what's left is that you're coming from two different backgrounds. So if, your wife, if you're a well-to-do man and you met your wife at the drive-thru at Dunkin' Donuts where she's working, is that going to last? Or are you setting yourself up to be sugar daddy for life? And she's setting herself up to be submissive and in a role of learned helplessness, right? And so that's what I think, is if you want a successful marriage, you probably want to marry somebody who comes from a similar background as you, and somebody who also is financially okay, stable. It seems to me that when you look at the literature on this stuff, it's really basic. It's people fight about money, always, when they're in close proximity. And it's not just marriages, too. Like, when you're young and you have roommates, you'll realize that you might like your roommates in the beginning, but then when people start missing their segment of the bills, you start hating them, right? So it's not just marriage, it's just anytime you're in close proximity to a person and, your wherewithals kind of meld together in your living situation, you're going to resent the other person if they're not on the same kind of financial footing as you, unfortunately. And you could see that by having roommates who are irresponsible, So, I mean, if you want a good marriage, whether it's a marriage between you and the state, or it's just, you're calling yourself married or whatever, you're shacked up. I really do think it's important to come from similar backgrounds, and that's why I got a great deal of respect for how they do things in China and the East. Um, because they really think about this stuff, and they really think about honor for the family too. In the West, I mean, it's just so messed up here, man. Like, you could be walking down the street and a girl catches your eye, and then, all of a sudden you're married. You never really probed her background. You don't know what she's all about. She doesn't know what you're all about. You're going based off of feels and hormones, and, I mean, that should definitely play a part in it, because that is part of the glue that keeps people together for a time. But that's why in the West, I think we have so many marriages that fall apart after the children have been produced, and the love fizzles because, as they say, love don't pay the bills. Beauty, romance, attraction, that doesn't do it. I mean, that's a small component, but it doesn't do it. So, but of course, that requires vetting, and a lot of people don't want to do that. You know, and in the West, people think it's have this cheapened view where they think it's more like dating is like an interview process to find a person who is like you. I've remarked on this a lot too, is that a lot of times you'll look at couples and they look very eerily similar. Like, people tend to be attracted to people who look like them, right? So if we follow that analogy, if people are attracted to people of the opposite sex who look like them, wouldn't they also be more attracted to people who come from backgrounds just like them too? So, but it also means you got to be honest with yourself. Are you from, a lower class, tenement area of the city, where you live a hand to mouth existence? Well, your spouse would probably be from a similar background. Are you from the suburbs? Was your dad a tech guy and your mom was a stay at home wife? Well, then, you should probably be searching out somebody who also came from a similar background. You know what I mean? Uh, if if you were born in the country, and all that, and you probably want to find somebody who also comes from the same background too. I don't know. It just seems to me there's a lot of ways to kind of get away from these problems, and you know learn from other people's problems. You know what I mean? So that you don't have to make the same mistakes. Because it seems to me a lot of these relationship problems are people just falling into the same traps, making mistakes that are easy to avoid. And especially as a man, how many times, guys, have you either had a booty call, or, you were dating a woman, you brought her home, you did the deed with her, and you never wanted to see her again, right? It happens. And so for that reason, like in the Bible, it says the heart is fickle, do not trust it, paraphrasing. I mean, you can't trust just merely attraction itself, and romance and all that stuff, because it's just not enough agglutination. It's not enough glue. If you can have sex with a woman and never want to see her again, or vice versa, she can have sex with you and never want to see you again, that is not the basis to create a marriage. It just isn't. I mean, that is a basis to decide if you want to create children with a person, but that is not a basis for a marriage, in my opinion. So, but then again, I mean, you've got this whole class of people now who are like, they're dating with intention, but they're stupid, because real dating with intention is finding people from a similar background as you know, and seeing if you have commonalities to build on. But when these people talk about dating with intention, and it's typically women talking about this, what they really mean is they want the man to basically be their slave, while they get to lay on the couch all day. That's what dating with intention means to them. And that's just as ridiculous as dating for attraction only. So, Sammy, I think that probably answers your question. I don't know, but I mean, I could go on and on for an hour. I don't plan on doing that. I'll go on and on for a couple more minutes. But, a simple question requires a simple answer. And ultimately, I just don't see, you know, I look at people, and I look at the pitfalls in their lives. And for me, it's so easy to avoid the pitfalls of other people. My pitfalls are different. My pitfalls are pitfalls I don't see other people falling into. My pitfalls are a little bit more sophisticated, I guess you would say. But when I see people making mistakes and I see many people like lemmings falling into the same traps, I do make a note of it and I say, I would like that to not be me, because I would like to have a life where I am not going to have to live in a courtroom for years, dealing with child custody or dealing with divorce or whatever. I mean, if you've ever been to court for anything, even a traffic ticket, you would realize it is hell. It sucks. And when I say it sucks, I mean that literally and figuratively. It is a time suck. It is an energy suck. Court is the largest energy vampire in the known universe. That's the last place you want to be. Just ask anybody who's been lately, Thankfully not me, but ask anybody who's been lately. It's horrible. So, you have to think before you put yourself in a situation that ultimately could lead to you being in court, Because not only is court siphoning your time and your energy, it also siphons your financial wherewithal also, so that's something to think about too. A lot of people forget that when you're getting married, whether you're just shacking up or whether you're getting the state involved, you are dealing with contracts. And anytime you're dealing with contracts, you deal with things called counterparty risks. And I'm not going to go into what a counterparty risk is, but you can look it up yourself. A counterparty risk is something that is contingent on any contract. And anytime you're dealing with contracts, you're dealing with people. And people are naturally fickle creatures, Some people are more likely to adhere to a contract and be honorable. Other people, they will adhere to a contract because of the consequences of not adhering to it. And when you're going to sign a contract like a marriage license, you need to know who you're dealing with, what type of person you're dealing with, because you want to deal with a person who's honorable. You don't want to deal with a person who adheres to a contract based on the fear of reprisal or consequences or litigation or whatever, and that means you have to take a different approach in regard to the type of person you seek. A lot of people don't want to do that because that sounds like a job. And hey, guess what? If you want to get married or if you want to have a spouse and create children, that is a job. It is. It just is. And if you don't want to do that, the requisite footwork for that, then you just shouldn't. You should stay single by yourself. Not like there's anything wrong with that. But the other thing that I would say to you, Sammy, is that if you're so scared of divorce, you should probably look into that, because most people are not like superstitiously scared of divorce. Most people know that divorce is a commonality in most marriage relationships. They know it sucks, but they're not scared of it, as in like a phobia. So you might want to look into that. I didn't ask your background. Maybe your mother and father are not together anymore, perhaps. But that's something you might look into. I mean, I am not a person who is scared of divorce. Like I would be more scared of somebody trying to unalive me than divorce. You know what I mean? So that's something I'd look into if I were you. I mean, I don't think it's something worth being scared of. And again, if you use logic in terms of vetting a person, you don't have to be scared of divorce. And here's the other thing too. If the leading cause of divorce is finance, well then make your life bulletproof where in case you do get divorced, at least your financial situation is good and bulletproof and your assets are protected if you have any. And then if you experience a divorce, well, I mean, at best, it's you go to the courthouse and your marriage gets dissolved and you pay a fee, right? At worst, you both lawyer up, you get a knockdown, drag out fight in court for years. But and see, that's the problem with marriage, is that you have to go in trusting, but you also have to verify. And what that means is you want to go in trusting, but you also want to make sure that your butt is protected just in case it doesn't work out. Now, a lot of guys go in asking for the prenup, but what the real OGs know is you don't even need to ask for a prenup. There are ways to structure your assets and your Skrilla where you don't even need to get a prenup. There's no need. If I were to ever get in a relationship with a woman where we want to call it marriage, because obviously I would never sign a contract, I would never ask for a prenup because I don't need one, because my assets are structured in a way where they're untouchable, because they're known to be owned by me before a marriage would even happen, which means they're not community property. A lot of guys don't think about this. I've said this so many times on this channel. If you're going to get married to a woman, there are certain things you must do in the West. Number one is your living situation needs to be accounted for. If you ever want to own a house, you better do that before you get married. Because if you get married and you buy a house with your wife, if you get divorced, you are going to experience pain in your rear end. That's one of the worst things. Think about the most traditionally illiquid asset, the thing that people spend the most money on. And now, you probably, if you're getting divorced, you have to sell it. Who knows when, what cycle you're in the market, whether it's a boom or a bust phase, and now you got to split the proceeds. And now you're going to be bickering. Oh, should we raise the price? Should we lower the price? We haven't had a showing in 5 weeks. Can you imagine what kind of hell that is? And people don't think about this stuff. They don't think about contingencies. Their mind doesn't work like it's, like it's game theory. My mind always works this way. It's like a factor tree. My mind is always racing ahead. If this happens, then what? And then it's a decision tree of so many limbs and branches and of what could happen. People don't think that way. And because they don't think that way, they get wrecked eternally. So thankfully, as you get older, it becomes easier to think with your brain than your wee-wee, but still, I don't know. In the West, people do not do it right. And that's why we have such a problem in this, in North America in particular, and Europe and Australia. So, I would say when people are searching for a job, they tend to vet the company they're going to work for because they want to know about it. Well, it's the same thing. If you want to get married, you better vet that person. You better vet their bloodline. You better vet everything about them that you can ascertain so that you go in knowing. Same thing. When you go in to buy a car, the dealership is looking to read you the riot act. They're looking to ding you as much as possible. So before you go to the dealership, you go in knowing as much as possible about the vehicle you want, right? Well, if you do that for a vehicle or a house, why wouldn't you do that for a marriage? Vehicles can break on you. Houses need service from time to time. But a spouse, that could be your most expensive mistake ever. Not just in terms of money, but in terms of, your life force, your energy, your verve, your love for life. Seen many people who have gotten divorced who are happy-go-lucky, and they almost exhibit the same behaviors as people who were addicted to methamphetamine yet got off of it. One of the telltale characteristics of meth abuse is that it destroys your dopamine circuitry, so that when you get off meth, you're no longer able physically, physiologically or whatever, to actually experience organic happiness anymore. And I've noticed this with people who have gotten divorced, is that they can no longer really experience organic happiness to the degree that they used to before they were married. So think about that. There's a lot to think about before you get married. So I appreciate having a woman ask me this question. I think that's cool. I like that. Anytime a woman is asking a question like that, it means her noggin is jogging, which is amazing. That's great. You should know that, because it means that you're going to go into it not blind, and you probably don't want to destroy your life, and you probably don't want to destroy the other person's life either. What I would say if you're a woman is marrying for love is not really an option if you want to live a good marriage. or for the man too, marrying for love. Love should be, love shouldn't even be, at most should be 50% of it. Probably not even that, honestly. Really, I mean, you should think in terms of pedigree, just like the elites, right? In terms of pedigree. And that's a conversation most people don't want to have because to them, love is the litmus test and that's it. But really, you should be thinking in terms of pedigree. I mean, look at how many people shack up together. They have children. The children end up, having, horrible maladies, like Down syndrome or whatever. Not making light of any of that. That's horrible. But these are things that could be avoided. They're, not just with CRISPR, but there are ways to ensure that you can, marry the right person. And I think AI actually will do wonders for this. It can cut to the quick or it can cut to the chase decades before you could make a mistake. And it could tell you right away, okay, you guys will be happy. You will have a good time. You'll have some good children that are healthy, wonderful. Or the AI could tell you, hey, look, you are heading down a very dark tunnel with a lot of, potential problems, I don't know. People don't want to think about this stuff because they like to shack up, they like to elope, they like to have shotgun weddings. That's what people like to do. It's not the play. I get it. People want to be spontaneous, and they've. The other thing too, you may not realize that you've been programmed via Disney and via movies and entertainment and all that to to view romance and love as something that's supposed to be spontaneous. Why does it have to be spontaneous? A lot of people think it has to be. Why? Who who made this rule? Why does it have to be? Why can't it be calculated? Why does calculation and doing your due diligence kill the love, so to speak? Why does spontaneity have to be part of it? I don't understand it. I think that's what gets a lot of people in trouble. Why? Why does it have to be that way? It's the same thing about, a guy walks into a strip club with his boys and he falls in love with the stripper. That's spontaneity right there. That's not using logic. That's not using a clear criteria, right? It's just not. That's how people get in trouble, I don't know. I think that's all I got for you guys. One more time, thesoftspoken@gmail.com is the place to hit me up. If you have questions, either, I can answer them privately for you or make a video or whatever. That's the place to hit me up. Those are the videos I make nowadays. So hope you enjoyed this and have a great night.